Thanks everybody for joining us today. For those of you that don't know me, haven't met me before, my name is Dylan Rupp. I'm the Director of Marketing here at EG4. And this is really a product that I'm excited to talk to the audience about today. This is a solution that, for me and my journey across energy storage systems, was a, a product lineup that I saw and immediately kind of understood the value and saw that EG4 was moving in a different direction than some of its peers and competitors, and really was moving in a direction that I believe met a lot of the challenges that we encounter in the field as energy solutions providers. Just a quick agenda. Want to talk a little bit about EG4, who we are, kind of why we do what it is that we do in the energy storage sector. We'll then get into the hardware that's included in the EG4 BOSS energy storage system. Talk about the FlexBOSS inverter, the wall mount batteries, and the GridBOSS microgrid interconnection device. We'll then pivot, talk about some of the features and capabilities that this impressive hardware set does unlock for our customers and our partners out in the field. And then we'll kind of end the presentation here talking about some of the applications that are unlocked with the solution set and why we do think that it is such a powerful device for our partners. Before we get into the actual equipment though, I always like to start just giving a little bit of background on who EG4 is and again, why it is we do what we do. So EG4 was founded 6 years ago at this point. It's crazy how time flies, but really founded on a principle of enabling your everyday American to be able to adopt energy storage and energy freedom by extension. And that's really something that everything that we have really strived to do over the last 6 years as a company has been in pursuit of. Excited to say that we've been incredibly successful at unlocking that energy freedom for a wide variety of customers, with over 800 megawatt hours of storage deployed to date across over 200,000 customers. We are really trying to push the boundaries on what an energy storage company can be and do for customers across the US. I'm going to pause here quickly. I'm seeing a couple of comments in the chat here that maybe there's some issue with the sound. Can somebody give me a thumbs up there in the chat if you're able to hear me? I want to make sure that the audio is coming through okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you guys. Edgar, Kevin, not sure what's going on there. Hopefully you guys can get your issues worked out. So as we continue to push those boundaries, I think the future of EG4 is incredibly exciting. We're investing heavily in domestic manufacturing, key partnerships, and technology platforms that we believe are going to further enable that energy freedom for our customers, our partners, and hopefully new customers that we've never met to date. And you're going to see that kind of across the announcements that you see EG4 making, either the announcement we made in the recent past at trade shows and via press releases, and some announcements that we'll continue to make in the future. So first and foremost, we're bringing a domestic content product line to the market, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation today, but that is our FlexBOSS Pro line, something that we've been really excited to feature at trade shows, and is going to give customers an EG4 solution that is domestic content eligible. So a really great product coming to market in 2026 there to go after a market category that's encouraged and excited to buy domestic content solutions. We're continuing to invest and develop our technology stack with our EG4 Grid Services product. And this is really a group within our team that is hyper-focused on enabling our customers to continue to monetize their energy storage solutions through what I'll say are non-traditional means, with kind of the elevation of virtual power plants across the markets. This is something that we're heavily invested in, really excited around some of the announcements that have happened here in the last few weeks, with a ton of new programs coming online and becoming eligible to participate in using EG4 equipment and gear. And then finally, some strategic partnerships that we are really excited to work on. Can't give too much details in the way of that, but suffice to say, you're going to continue to see EG4 developing and promoting technologies that are on the cutting edge in this space. Things like vehicle to grid capabilities, meter socket adapters, and significantly more. So If you're not already, please make sure that you're keeping up with us via our newsletter, following us on social media. That'll be a great mechanism to go ahead and keep up with some of the exciting developments and announcements that we have in the future. But want to focus more today on what we offer our partners, because there's a ton of value in what we're doing today. And that really comes forth when you start looking at our FlexBOSS line of energy storage systems. And within that, I want to start by introducing the FlexBOSS inverter, which is our transformerless hybrid inverter that really acts as the power delivery mechanism of the system. You'll often hear us talk about true whole home backup with the FlexBOSS energy storage system lineup. And there's a few reasons that we talk about that, and those will become obvious as we go through the course of this presentation and webinar. But I think first and foremost, you really start to look at what your inverter is capable of delivering for you in the context of home backup and home power delivery. And the FlexBOSS is a whole home capable inverter for most modern US residences. Just for some background, when I say that, most average homes in the US, and you can see this across numerous studies, the one I've most recently been looking at was put forth by UC Berkeley's Energy Lab. Most average residents in the US are going to use 40 amps or less at their maximum demand moments. That 50 amp or the 50 amp continuous output of the FlexBOSS 21 is more than enough power to reliably power any home that has a typical max demand of 40 amps with some additional headroom. Now, certainly that is the average home, so you are going to have some subset of homes that are using more than that 40 amps of continuous usage during their high energy demand moments. And where those come across, the FlexBOSS can easily be paralleled and scaled to deliver reliable power capability for those homes as well. And what you're going to find is paralleling two of these inverters with a 100 amp continuous output is going to be able to meet the highest energy use moments for 98% or more of homes in the US. So this unit is more than power capable to reliably back up customers, even if they choose not to change their behaviors in the context of a off-grid moment in time. They will also have that reliable power to fully offset any consumption from the utility using only the power that's available within their energy storage system. Now, arguably more important than the power you can deliver continuously is the surge power that you can deliver in the context of an off-grid event to go ahead and start up loads that do have high surge demands. And this FlexBOSS unit really stands up in the face of those types of situations as well, reliably starting anything up to a 5-ton HVAC with a 195 amp starting surge current delivery capability. Again, this really means that no load in the home is inaccessible for customers in the event of a grid outage. Now, obviously, it benefits the homeowner to selectively power some of those loads, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the course of this presentation, because you'll see the FlexBOSS system, while it can power those loads, also gives a really nice means to intelligently power those loads when needed. Additionally, from a power capability standpoint, the FlexBOSS really enables a host of power sources to be brought in, with solar being kind of the primary one that we see as a means of additional power production within the context of an energy storage system. The FlexBOSS 21 can accept up to 24 kilowatts of solar, and up to 21 kilowatts of that connected solar is actually capable of being utilized by the inverter at any given point in time. And what I mean when I say utilized is the inverter can deliver a 50 amp or 12 kilowatt continuous AC output. However, the balance of available solar up to 21 kilowatts can be made available to charge the batteries at the same time the inverter is outputting power to the home. So said another way, if the home is demanding 10 kilowatts of power and we're producing 21 kilowatts of solar, we're not clipping or losing that additional 11 kilowatts. We're actually able to bring in that additional 11 kilowatts of DC power and use it to charge our battery while we're still delivering that 10 kilowatts of AC to the home. Ensuring that every single kilowatt hour that's produced on site is available for use first makes for the most reliable system that we can possibly deliver in the event of an outage. But even in the context of a world in which solar buyback rates continue to be devalued, this gives the homeowner a ton of capability to ensure that they are intelligently deploying power within their home that they did produce at relatively low or quote unquote free cost from the solar array attached. So really encourages or really incentivizes customers and enables them to maximize the return on investment of their deployed energy storage system. Now, despite housing a host of high-powered power electronics in the system that do deliver that power capability, this is an incredibly reliable and rugged unit. First and foremost, it's designed to be deployed in just about any environmental set of conditions with a NEMA 4X rating on the actual enclosure itself and a temperature range that enables it to be deployed down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit up to 131 degrees Fahrenheit. So just about any location is available for deployment. Not only is it rugged in the context of its deployment location, but the power capability of the system is rugged as well. The unit comes with a 10-year standard warranty, and we're able to really rely on significantly more than 10 years of performance out of these units due to the high quality power electronics that we're using, to the point that this unit is not only capable of withstanding kind of the typical surges that you might see from the utility grid at any given point in time, but even more extreme surges, those that can be caused by things like electromagnetic pulses. Those are surges of electricity that are going to damage and frankly kill most electronic components in most devices. Each of our FlexBOSS units comes EMP hardened at no additional cost for the end user, so it can withstand those types of events and reliably continue to power the loads in a customer's home, the loads that weren't damaged potentially, but still it will deliver that power for those customers. And we really see that reliability across our fleet of deployed assets. We've to date deployed over 7,000 of these FlexBOSS units, and we're continuing to have a ton of success with it as a reliable solution out in the field. Our wall mount 314 amp hour battery is an easily deployed high storage capacity solution that's been built to match that FlexBOSS inverter. This unit is the next iteration in our wall mount lineup, succeeding our popular 280 amp hour product. And it does include many of the features that made that such a popular product, but some additional enhancements that we really were able to lean on our partners in the field to deploy these to give us feedback and build those into the unit to make an even more deployable, even more reliable unit. Now, the unit, as you'd expect, does pack considerable energy capacity and power delivery in a relatively small footprint. Each one of these units with 314 amp hours of capacity stores up to 16 kilowatt hours of energy and will support 10 kilowatts of continuous AC output. Now, for optimal performance, we do recommend generally that at least 2 of these units are deployed per FlexBOSS inverter, with up to 32 supported in a single deployment. Now, the smart capability of this unit makes paralleling additional units incredibly easy. The 314 amp hour wall mount comes with our EG4 3.0 BMS. This BMS has what we refer to as auto ID technology. This technology enables the unit to not only detect the type of inverter it's connected to, the number of batteries that it's connected to, but to automatically program itself for those conditions. So for the installer in the field, there's no additional work to make things communicate and talk to one another. Significantly reduces time on site and potential issues with communication due to that auto ID technology. This unit does come with two different enclosure types, one for indoor deployments and a second for deployments in any weather. Now, whether you're using the indoor or the all-weather configuration of this model, both solutions come with integrated self-heating, so you can deploy these in cold weather locations. Obviously, in the context of an outdoor installation, most of the US will be subjected to temperatures below freezing. But for customers who are in the northern portions of the country, even somewhere like a garage installation or a basement installation could see temperatures below freezing, that integrated self-heating ensures reliable performance no matter the temperature that the unit is subjected to. Further, the IP67 rated enclosure of the all-weather unit actually means that it can be submerged in up to 3 feet of water for up to 30 minutes and continue to operate. Now, I was dubious when I first heard that, and so I challenged our engineering team and I said, so if we had a system that was flooded and was fully submerged in water, would it be warranted? And they said, absolutely, yes, that is something we would warranty. So really, really phenomenal to see the improvements and innovation in the enclosure with this unit to give you that reliable performance, kind of no matter the environmental conditions it might be subjected to. And then no matter where you install it, whether it's indoors, outdoors, this unit can be counted on to deliver reliable and safe performance. It has a 10-year, 10,000 cycle warranty standard. And the stability that enables us to offer that extended warranty also shows up in regards to the safety performance with the unit. The model's been certified to UL 9540 as a DCESS. Now, what that means is all of the safety mechanisms that are generally required for an energy storage system, a lot of the safety mechanisms that generally will be actually performed by the inverter, have fully been integrated into the BMS of the battery itself. So just the battery alone now qualifies as a 9540 compliant system and can generally be paired with any 1741 compliant inverter, meaning the full suite of EG4 inverters. So this was really designed to pair up predominantly with our FlexBOSS inverter. The full suite of EG4 inverters is available to deploy with this 314 wall mount solution to make a compliant system. Beyond that, this unit has been subjected to large-scale fire safety testing and shown to not propagate fire even from the cell-to-cell level, meaning it's a very safe solution. And more impressive than that, and really going the extra mile, in order to run that fire safety test, you actually have to start a fire within the battery to see how the battery performs. What this means is the integrated fire arresters that we include in every single unit had to be pulled out in order to perform the test reliably and get a result. So realistically, even without the integrated fire arresters that do come standard, this unit has shown to be incredibly safe in the event of any type of thermal runaway. And we've really taken it a step further by including those fire arresters to stop any thermal runaway event before it could even start. And then finally, pulling the GridBOSS lineup together is the EG4 GridBOSS, our smart interconnection device. The core function of the GridBOSS is really to enable a 200 amp interconnection for the energy storage system, giving you full home backup for a 200 amp service and the ability to safely island behind the meter and continue to power the loads in the home, regardless of what might be happening on the utility side of the meter. However, despite that capability, or in addition to that capability, I should say, the GridBOSS really delivers a ton of additional features and benefits to make the FlexBOSS lineup even more powerful and reliable. Each one of the GridBOSS units encompasses over $5,000 in balance of system components that would be required to be purchased and installed with more traditional energy storage systems. First, it has a 200 amp service entrance rated grid connection if you pair it with an Eaton CSR 200 amp breaker. This removes the need to deploy any service entrance rated equipment prior to the GridBOSS, taking out about $1,000 worth of balance of system requirements. The unit has a generator integration directly embedded in the system, essentially a generator automatic transfer switch. And it features both auto start and generator exercise functionality included, giving you the ability to attach up to a 36 kilowatt generator directly into the GridBOSS and have all the same functionalities that you would see with a traditional ATS, and having that generator now be an integral part of the home's energy system, all managed intelligently by the energy storage system. A 200 amp manual bypass is included in each one of these units, ensuring that should there ever be a need to go out and service the energy storage system, the unit can easily be bypassed without any additional rewiring or effort on the part of the individual performing the servicing. Kind of the worst nightmare in my view for an installer of this type of equipment is delivering a whole home backup system for a customer, having that system have an issue no matter what it is, and having that customer call and say, all my neighbors have power, but I don't. And that creates an urgent truck roll for that installer. With this integrated bypass, it would be very easy to go and coach that customer to simply flip that bypass, have them be able to power the home off the utility directly, and roll a truck in a more traditional manner to potentially address what might be going on with the system. And there's a host of reasons. Our partners are subjected to service calls, of course, some actual issues, some just a misunderstanding of how the system works. But that manual bypass gives a really, really great mechanism to increase the reliability of this system when deployed and kind of avoid some of those urgent truck rolls that could otherwise happen. Each GridBOSS does have an integrated panel board that enables you to parallel up to 3 EG4 hybrid inverters directly at the unit with no additional combining panels or combining equipment required. So it enables you to add additional capability to this system either at time of install or at a later date with essentially a single conductor run. And then finally, there are 4 smart loads built into these units, which gives you either load management capability or the ability to AC couple an existing solar installation directly into the energy storage system integrated directly into the GridBOSS. Now, because it eliminates so much of the required balance of systems that might come up with an energy storage install, and each component that can be attached to the GridBOSS has a dedicated input, this unit greatly simplifies design and really delivers as much of a cookie cutter experience as you're going to find when deploying energy storage systems across the whole host of different applications that are supported by the GridBOSS. And then, not to bury the lead, the load shedding capability of this unit really enhances the performance and the reliability of this system. Load shedding has repeatedly been shown to be one of the most cost-effective means to extend off-grid runtime for energy storage systems. Having that ability to intelligently manage those large loads often is the difference between a customer staying up during an extended outage and continue to have power to the critical loads in their home versus having a situation where their battery becomes drained and now they're in the dark because of a ineffective management of loads within their home. Not only does that create a more reliable, more effective experience for the homeowner and the end user of the system, for installers of these systems, it creates less service calls by ensuring that customers aren't unknowingly draining their batteries with kind of nice to have but not critical loads in their home. That automatic shedding capability ensures that when a load needs to be shed, whether it be based on grid availability, battery state of charge, that load is shed by the system. So really all these capabilities taken together is why we've coined true whole home backup as the tagline for the FlexBOSS energy storage system. It really pulls in a ton of different capability, the ability to really execute on all the things that you would like to see and expect to see in the context of whole home backup, and delivers that capability in a single energy storage system in a highly deployable fashion, which we'll talk about in just a moment here. Now, getting into some of the more obscure features and capabilities of the system, this unit really is built to deliver incredibly high power quality, both on the AC side of the inverter as well as the DC side of the inverter, which is incredibly important, as we'll talk about in just a moment here. Now, on the AC side of the system, this unit can reliably power even the most sensitive of electronics with little to no issue. Less than 5% of total harmonic distortion, for those of you that aren't familiar with that phrase, total harmonic distortion, or THD, is essentially just a measurement of the amount of noise within the AC sine wave that is delivered by a power source. High amounts of total harmonic distortion can damage sensitive electronics or cause other issues in the home. So ensuring that you have low levels of THD is important, again, especially for the more sensitive electronics in the home. And that is what the FlexBOSS inverter delivers. Not only does it deliver a very low amount of THD for loads in the home, it also will give you a seamless transfer from a grid tied to an off-grid mode of operation. So if a customer is subjected to frequent brownouts in their area, for example, they can rely on this inverter to essentially seamlessly carry them through those brownout conditions with little to no perceptible interruption of power within their home. Now, on the DC side, probably even more impressive when you compare us to our competitors in the industry, we really have taken steps to ensure that this unit is designed to deliver and ensure battery longevity. DC ripple current is not something that I hear talked about a lot, but is an important design consideration with these systems. Essentially, DC ripple current are ripples in the DC energy flow to the batteries of the system that can be caused by high frequency oscillations that are introduced by the power electronics necessary to output AC power with the system. So essentially, it makes the DC power to the batteries behave kind of like AC with a lot of oscillations within that power output. That ripple current can heat the battery unnecessarily, cause microcycling of the battery, both of which are going to shorten the battery life, or in a less extreme case, it can just confuse the battery and lead to inaccurate SOC calculations and readings, which will arbitrarily degrade the capacity of the battery, right? If your battery thinks it only has 85% SOC when it really is at 100, you're going to leave 15% on the table in the event of a discharge cycle of that battery. So really important to ensure that your power electronics or your inverter has low levels of DC ripple current, and the EG4 FlexBOSS unit certainly delivers on that with less than 5% DC ripple current. Now, again, not a spec that's given a lot of attention in the industry. So for some context, we generally measure our competitors to give ourselves a yardstick to measure up against, and we often find 30 up to 50% DC ripple current being delivered to batteries by a lot of the different hybrid inverters that are on the market today. So that's a very important spec that we continue to drive forth, despite it not being a spec that gets a lot of fanfare. We think it's important to still focus on those things that are going to deliver reliable performance over the life of the system. And again, I said it before, I'll say it again. I think that really shows up with our 10,000 cycle warranty that we have across our 314 amp hour line of batteries. That's something that if we're able to warranty a solution for 10,000 cycles, it really means that we trust the performance of that battery over the long haul and with regular, repeated, heavy use of that battery. I said it at the top, we really at EG4 try to take the feedback from our partners in the field and implement those into the solutions that we engineer. And that's really what you see with this FlexBOSS energy storage system. And what we repeatedly heard from our partners in the field was they wanted something that was easy to install, something that they could reliably go out and install with minimal issues. And so we really focused on installability with this product line. We talked a lot about the GridBOSS and what it does there to kind of enable a bunch of different sources to be pulled to that single location and make for very easy design by giving you dedicated inputs for each one of those different components. But even going a step beyond that, what we've enabled with this device is to enable you to locate the different components of the system on site where the site allows. You're not having to significantly rework the site in order to fit an energy storage system into a space that the energy storage system kind of dictates based on the way that it's designed. The expandability of this system is unmatched with the plug and play integration that we talked a little bit about in the context of the third generation BMS, but we'll expand on a little bit more to show you not only is that prevalent on the DC side, but also on the AC side of the system. And then we have a bunch of different capabilities around power control and energy management that make for a more reliable system, but also a more compliant system. So you're not having to go and arm wrestle with the AHJ or utility in order to deploy this technology on a customer's home. Now, looking at the locational flexibility, we kind of talked about in the context of rugged outdoor exterior, but even beyond that, what this system enables you to do is, like I said on the previous slide, deploy the different components of the system where it makes sense to minimize the amount of site rework that needs to happen. And so if we look at a example site here, maybe we have a home with an external garage or shed. The main meter for the home is located at the main house, but maybe the ideal spot for the solar is actually on that shed. Potentially that's the only southern facing roof line of the property that's going to deliver a significant amount of energy production for the site. And then we can further imagine there might be a sub panel and an existing run already over to that shop from the main house distribution panel to get power over to that shop. Now, what you're going to see with our FlexBOSS line is that situation can easily be handled by the solution set. So here we now see we've installed our solar on the roof here. We have our FlexBOSS inverter and batteries where there's not going to be a significant DC run over to the inverter. So those have been installed right there on the shed or the garage on a wall there in some shade so they aren't subjected to the direct sunlight. And then we're going to put the GridBOSS at the main house right next to the meter, right? So because that GridBOSS is the interconnection device, it is what actually enables that interconnection with the utility. And so it is usually the easiest to place it right next to the meter to minimize conductor runs, especially the large conductor runs that are necessary to carry the full service rating for the home. As we said, solar directly into the FlexBOSS. And then what's really cool about this solution is we can actually repurpose the sub panel run and use that run now instead of going from the distribution panel of the home. We can have that run now be actually into the inverter and over to the GridBOSS. You're not having to pull a whole new circuit. You might have to just add a junction box and extend that circuit a bit, but it gives you the ability to deploy this system at a separate location in the house, repurpose some of the existing infrastructure without having to trench or dig a new line, and have a really easy mechanism to make that AC connection back to the GridBOSS from the inverter. And then we can simply have a second output from the inverter that goes directly to power that sub panel on site. So we still now have essentially delivered the promise of whole home backup. And we've done that placing the energy storage system in the inverter where it needs to be, and only had to perform minimal site disruption for a situation that traditionally would require either trenching or multiple significant conductor runs in order to pull off whole home backup on this type of system. And we've seen this in the field multiple times. This is actually a common scenario for especially our customer base in Texas, who might be in a little bit more rural location, might have a building on site that's not necessarily where their main meter is located, and they want an easy means to put solar on that building, but still have that power available at the house or where the main meter for the site is located. Now, further extending that, you can even do things like separate batteries behind individual inverters and operate those inverter and batteries, I'll say subsystems, as a single system overall. So what we can see here is essentially a site that, for whatever reasons, whether it be just physical constraints on the site with not much space or restrictions from NFPA, a situation where there's really only room for 2 batteries in a given location. However, a customer who wants 4 batteries to be deployed. So you can actually put 4 batteries on this site across 2 different locations in the home. And then you can simply run an AC connection from each inverter in the system over to the grid boss. You'll still run communication connections as well from the inverters over to the grid boss, and essentially have this entire system act as one large battery bank, despite the battery kind of being broken up into multiple sub banks behind individual inverters. Now, again, where that can become really important is situations where we're deploying large amounts of batteries and we want to minimize voltage drop. That's especially important in a 48-volt architecture, which the FlexBOSS line is. We don't want to have significant conductor runs where even a 1 or 2 volt drop from a percentage standpoint can be pretty significant as far as total power availability for the system. This reduces the balance of system required on site, where traditionally this might require significantly more conduit to get places or external combiner panels. That now has all been eliminated with this deployment. And then, like I said, certainly you're going to run into this with NFPA fire zones where, for example, in a garage, they generally want to see 40 kilowatt hours or less. So if that customer wants to do 80 kilowatt hours or 100 kilowatt hours, we might be able to deploy some of those batteries in a garage, some additional batteries at an outdoor location, and again, still have that entire system operate as a single solution when it's delivering power for use in the customer's home. General caveat here is would recommend an equal number of batteries be deployed kind of behind each sub bank here, just so we don't see significantly more drawdown from a percentage perspective in one bank versus another. But again, a really, really great way to get a little creative and enable deployment of the system that the customer wants to see with as minimal issue as possible for the site conditions. The unit does support RSD and energy storage system disconnect with a single device. So if you are using the full EG4 product lineup, that disconnect and solar RSD can be supported by a single RSD button, right? So no matter what that AHJ wants to see as far as disconnect capability, you can generally meet it with a single device here, either by where you place the grid boss with the appropriate placards, or via a e-stop button that is deployed separately. That's a nice big red button for an emergency responder to see. We can put that e-stop capability where it's needed on site with as little equipment as necessary. And again, why I say a single device, a lot of systems that you'll see on the market are going to have one device to perform rapid shutdown, a second device to perform battery emergency stop. That is all performed with a single e-stop button with the EG4 system. And if you want to learn more about that, really excited that we just published a training video that dives into depth on this topic. You can scan that, view that now. We talked a lot about the need to potentially add additional capacity behind inverters, and the EG4 wall mount line of batteries really gives you the easiest means to go ahead and accomplish that task. Essentially, all you need to do to add additional capacity behind an EG4 inverter is run 3 conductors between additional batteries. The 600 amp internal bus of our wall mount battery series can support up to 6 batteries with no additional external bus bars needed on site. That will simply enable you to run a single conductor from the positive, a single conductor from the negative over to the adjacent battery, and have those things, and now have both of those internal battery buses operate in parallel. One additional conductor is required for communications, but again, as we talked about earlier, because of the auto ID technology on site, there's no additional action needed aside from simply plugging those conductors in to the appropriate batteries in the appropriate ports to get those things communicating and identifying the batteries that are on site and ensuring that they communicate and can cooperate with each other to provide a single battery bank for delivery to the inverter. And then finally, there is a screw terminal, which is attached to that same internal bus of the battery system. So if you do have an external power source that you want to go ahead and integrate with the system, and a great example of this might be our EG4 charge inverter, it gives you a means to now add that external power source to those screw down terminals, again, without having to do something. And then finally, getting into some of the compliance capabilities of this solution. The BOSS line is both an energy management system, an EMS, as well as a power control system. And that does a couple of key things for you to kind of streamline compliance, streamline deployability. We already talked a little bit about the load shedding capability of the GridBOSS, but I think it bears repeating that acting as an energy management system to intelligently manage the loads on site, this GridBOSS can reliably increase the off-grid runtime of an energy storage system by as much as 40 to 50%. And it's going to do so at less than 60% of the cost of a traditional smart panel solution that you might see deployed alongside an energy storage system. And that's before you consider all the additional functionality that we talked about with the GridBOSS. And so, that might seem like a bold claim where some of these smart panels have 32 smart circuits and our GridBOSS only has 4. But when you really start delving into the data, what you're going to find is upwards of 60 to 70% of energy consumption in a residential context is going to be consumed by 4 to 5 key loads. Far and away, the largest is generally going to be climate control, whether that's cooling or heating, depending on the geographic region, is usually your largest energy consumer in a customer's home. Electric water heating follows behind that, generally taking up to 15% of the total consumption of a residential home over the course of the year. Laundry equipment is another large consumer of loads. Any resistive heating generally will be a heavy consumer. And then certainly special considerations, things like EV chargers or pool pumps can become energy hogs where those are deployed. They're not across every home, so they're not usually represented as well in the data, but certainly we know from experience, those can become very energy intensive devices, and so make a lot of sense to intelligently manage those and load shed those under certain conditions to really prolong the performance of that system. Now, that energy management system capability not only increases performance, but like I said previously, streamlines compliance. So there are a couple of key code sections that an energy management system will enable compliance to significantly easier than kind of the alternate paths that are required. The first essentially states that if the connection to a load is automatic, the standby resource should be adequate to power the entire potential load present by the property or the home being supplied by the power source. What that means is for a home with a 200 amp service, in theory, on paper, the full load of that home that should be able to be deployed is 200 amps. Obviously, that would well oversize the inverter needs for most homes, where we already talked about generally most homes pull at most 40 amps during their peak demand usage. So it requires our partners a lot of times to either be forced into installing a critical load subpanel or way more inverters than they should realistically need to power that home reliably. However, the alternate path is to install an energy management system, essentially a system that can shed some of the heavy consumers to ensure that the continuous output of the system now is rated to power the automatically connected load of the system. Another place where this can come into play is a similar section of code, or a similar statement of code, although in a different section, that says a standalone system shall be equal to or greater than the load posed by the single largest load on site. And that makes a lot of sense. It essentially says, don't connect a load that draws more power than what your power source is able to deliver. Now, for a lot of systems, again, this means we're going to have to relocate a ton of loads to pull those out of the non-backed up panel and now create a new backed up panel. Instead, what we can do with the GridBOSS is simply relocate that single largest load to one of our smart circuits. And again, we can support up to 125 amps with our largest smart circuit within the grid boss, and have that load be automatically shed when the grid is lost, thereby adhering to this section of code. So again, really can streamline the compliance situation for niche conditions or abstract scenarios as those come about for our partners in the field. And then the BOSS line can also act as a power control system, or a PCS. And we really do this through compliance with two different standards, both of which are kind of the same standard. Actually, there's a kind of a shift from the traditional UL 1741 CRD for PCS over to UL 3141. I only mention this to say you can find certification documentation for both of these standards on the EG4 website, but there's really two critical functionalities that are met by the system as a power control system. The first is bus bar PCS, which enables the system to limit the current delivered to the main bus of the system from all of the power sources. And it's more intelligent than simply derating the inverter, which is what you would historically see. What this does is it leverages a real-time consumption measurement from the various devices or power sources connected to the system, and can actually throttle both any AC connected solar as well as the EG4 energy storage system connected, to ensure that the mix of all the different power sources never exceeds 80% of the bus bar rating of the system connected to the device. So again, really helps with certain applications that would otherwise require panel or service upgrades, and enables customers to install larger systems and actually have all of that inverter power be available within the context of the install, except for very obscure times where you may have to derate the real-time output of the inverter to ensure we are under a certain bus bar threshold. Now, the other situation that we commonly see is export limiting across all sources, which is a similar functionality, but now instead of limiting power delivery to the main panel to protect the bus bar, we are limiting the output back to the utility connected to the system. And again, applications here are varied, but what we commonly see is limitations on NIM 3.0 export limits, where the AHJs or the utilities in California don't like to see more than 10 kilowatts of continuous output. And that can apply both to simply a newly installed system or a retrofit, a battery retrofit, where you might already have some grid-tied solar. And having this capability does enable you to still capitalize on the existing net metering plan of the existing solar, and with no additional export from the newly added solar to the system. And the last one that we see where this might come into play is avoiding expensive transmission system upgrades. So if a customer is told they can't install an energy storage system of a certain size because the transformer outside of their home can't handle the continuous nameplate output of that inverter, this capability, this power control system capability, can be leveraged to ensure, again, that the system as a whole never delivers more than a predefined limit to protect that transformer connected to the customer's meter. And then finally, getting into some kind of high-level applications here that I want to talk a little bit about. This, again, is kind of a rehashing of a lot of the things that we've already talked about. Again, why we believe this system delivers true whole home backup. And again, that really is the main application where we see this system deployed. The system is designed to support a 200 amp service from the utility. It can reliably power that typical daytime load of generally or most US homes that we're going to see these systems deployed on, even considering the high demand points in time of that system. It's a readily expandable storage solution. So even for customers with daily consumption, 40, 50 kilowatt hours a day, pretty easy to deploy enough storage at a very cost-effective price point at about $265 a kilowatt hour with our wall mount battery solution to meet those energy demands to deliver true offset of utility power. Where those customers have large inductive loads, so we already saw that the FlexBOSS inverter can surge up to very high power outputs to start those large inductive loads. And then finally, that intelligent load shedding of the system does enable the customers to increase that off-grid runtime by 30 to 40%, if not more, as they intelligently manage the loads in the customer's home. However, some additional application cases that we think this is a phenomenal fit for. First is retrofitting existing solar installs. And I think this is one that's going to become more and more important and common in the new world that we all live in, where some of the tax credits, especially tax credits for grid-tied only solar systems, have started to be phased out. And we're seeing buyback rates become less and less lucrative for our customers. The FlexBOSS solution gives a really cost-effective way to go ahead and retrofit existing solar installs very easily with some storage capability, deliver whole home backup, and do so at an incredibly cost-effective price point. So not only are we able to offer this solution at a per unit cost that significantly outpaces a lot of our competition in the field, one of the really cool things is because of the way that our GridBOSS is able to AC couple existing solar, essentially any existing solar installation can be retrofit as long as it is UL 1741 compliant. Other systems might require you to use proprietary inverter technology, even in the context of a retro for communication. None of that is required for an EG4 solution. We can, again, retrofit essentially any solution that might be on the market. Even beyond that, we offer seamless management of multiple power sources, what I would call a true microgrid controller. So if you have a customer who might have existing solar and they found out that doesn't provide power in a grid down situation, so they then went and installed a generator, and now they want to come back and add energy storage to that site and have all of it work seamlessly together, the GridBOSS can be dropped in place to manage all those different power sources with minimal issue seamlessly without having to add any additional components or do any complex programming. It's all built into the system, designed to handle these fringe cases that we do see across the industry. Again, one that we're seeing more and more common is arbitrage and peak shaving for customers. So customers who might not even want to have backup necessarily installed today, but they want to start eliminating some of the high costs that they're being subjected to from their utility for things like peak demand rates or time of use batteries. So didn't talk a lot about it over the course of the presentation, but the FlexBOSS inverter can actually be deployed standalone. It can be deployed without a GridBOSS. And a lot of our competition is unable to meet that criteria, that either require an external gateway to be installed, they have a very large MID built in, and those things drive the cost up, or they just have a relatively higher cost solution that they have on offer. So again, this is a solution that, especially in the California, Arizona markets, we're seeing more and more customers start to opt toward to give themselves some utility savings at, again, a very attractive price point. And the nice thing there is, even under this deployment scenario, we can come back and potentially add backup later, whole home backup later, by adding something like a GridBOSS. Or if that customer wants to do a partial home backup, again, like I said, the FlexBOSS can be deployed standalone, and it can be deployed standalone to do a partial home backup. About a 90 amp interconnection can be supported directly in the FlexBOSS. You lose a lot of the great benefits of that GridBOSS, the 200 amp interconnection and all the additional features. However, we can still deliver some backup power with just the FlexBOSS for customers whose budget necessitates that installation strategy. And then just a quick comparison to some of the other leading solutions on the market. And this is really who I would consider to be the class of solution providers that we are in. These are all phenomenal equipment providers across the market. But not to spend too much time on this slide, what I will call out is The features of the EG4 solution set stack up incredibly well against the rest of the industry, and they really do so at a price point, especially when you consider deployability, that is incredibly enabling for customers to start to adopt these solutions. And then one final sneak peek I'll give you, I kind of tease it at the top here, but I will encourage you all to continue to follow EG4 and keep up with us as we continue to innovate and bring new solutions to market. And this is a good example of a solution that we talked about here at Intersolar a few weeks ago, and we'll continue to promote across trade shows in the near future and launch sometime in Q2 as a critical new product for EG4, which is our FlexBOSS Pro. This is our domestic content eligible inverter solution that we will be pairing with some domestic content batteries to add a new market that is served by EG4 in this space. This technology is built on a lot of the same benefits and features as what you've seen with our existing FlexBOSS line. However, we have now stepped up to a 96-volt DC architecture with those batteries. And there's some key reasons we've done that. Improved power output capability, which you'll see reflected in the specifications here, and some increased efficiency, which again becomes very important as the amount of energy produced on site becomes more and more valuable in the context of rising utility rates and utility plans that subject our customers to things like peak demand charges as well as time of use rates. So don't want to spend too much time talking about this FlexBOSS Pro other than just to create awareness that it is something that is going to be available in the coming months from EG4, and something that, again, I encourage you to follow us across our social media channels, across YouTube, as subscribe to our newsletter to keep up to date on availability of this product and some of the supporting storage solutions that will launch alongside it. With that, I will say thank you to everybody who attended today, and I will give a plug. We will be at NABCEP next week. Incredibly excited. I hope I see some of you in Milwaukee. We'll be at booth number 309. We will be holding an education session on Monday, and generally just attending the show. So incredibly excited to be attending NABCEP this year. I certainly hope to see some of the attendees here today at that show and talk a little bit more about the EG4 solution set. So with that, we are a couple minutes over. Appreciate everybody who stuck with us for the full hour here. I will stick around for just a few more minutes to see if there are any outstanding questions that haven't been answered. Otherwise, appreciate everybody spending the time with us here today. And I do hope this was valuable to learn a little bit more about our FlexBOSS line of energy storage systems. So just a couple things I'll call out here. EG4 will be coming out with updated LCD screen that is mounted outside of the FlexBOSS on the front panel. So yeah, currently the design of the FlexBOSS does not have an LCD screen on the outside of the solution. No imminent plans to change that. However, we are working on some updated LCD screens that are going to have a little bit more universal functionality that will become an optional component to be added to the system. So keep an eye on that. That is something that we will have out this year and may be a solution to meet some of the requirements you have there, Jess. Mark was asking about communications from GridBOSS to FlexBOSS, and then followed up saying, referring to the slide we showed, talking about no need to trench. So yeah, Mark, potentially a bit of an overstatement there on my end. We would want to pull a communications conductor. Hopefully we would be able to use some of the existing infrastructure on site. If that existing conductor was in conduit, obviously communication cable would need to be rated for the voltage. If not, potentially some additional work would be needed there. That's certainly a fair statement. I see John is replying to a question from Craig, plan for offline configuration. So I'll just say, Craig, go ahead and tune into our next webinar. We're going to be talking about some of our app solutions, and that will be a topic that we discuss during that webinar. but it is something that is being worked on, and we should be supporting soon. All right, everybody, if there are no more questions, again, really appreciate the attendance today. And again, I encourage you to reach out to us at sales@eg4electronics.com if there's any additional questions or anything more that we can do to support coming jobs or even existing jobs. And I do appreciate, again, the time today.